Hey everybody, it's Z Power Hour here. Welcome back to another episode of Competitive Loring. Today we're going to be going over something a little bit spicy. I've been looking at it a little bit over the last couple of weeks as people prepare for Continentals. And if your opponents are playing Ruby, I feel like you've got a pretty good shot with this deck. There may be some adjustments that need to be made moving into playing against more of the Maui Sharks, but we'll discuss that more as we get to it. So right here we've got Purpfasa. Many of you recall the very first DLC in Atlanta was actually won by a deck in a similar color scheme and similar style. So let's go ahead and start going through the list and see what we have. First off, we have 2 copies of Daisy Duck. Not inherently a card that you want to see all the time in the games. Obviously gives your card advantage to your opponent. Not the best thing in the world, but it does challenge efficiently if you do end up running into the Emerald decks with the Christmas Folks and things of that nature. It's also a great target for Rapunzel. We'll see, obviously, later in the list. 4 copies of Chernobog's Followers, Creatures of Evil. Just a very good early card that can replace itself. If you're playing against red-blue, it gets to stick around usually for a turn if they have to go C instead of Tipo, as well as it can keep a Flynn from triggering going into turn 3. And then we have 3 copies of Diablo Obedient Raven. One of the best Amethyst 1-drops that have been printed here and recently. It replaces itself, and it's a fine target for Crab Challenger if you're forced to play a Crab on 3. In the 2-drops, we have 4 Lilo Escape Artists. This is your best friend in your Ruby Sapphire matchups. Playing these and just questing and then trying to recur them and keep your opponent off tempo is very good if you can get underneath the sharks. 2 copies of Cusco Wanted Llama. Not too many other cards I want to play in this slot. I want to find an Inkable that replaces itself and can quest, and this happens to be it. Also challenges for 4 with the crab buff, and yeah, it just helps keep our hand at a decent size. 4 copies of Madam Mimp Snake. You can't go wrong with Snake. It's your best challenge, like your best 2-drop in that regard. It keeps Flynn down once again until after the CC resolves. Very good challenger, can aggressively challenge into your Amber Steel matchups. Just a lot of good things about this card. The only downside is if you hit it off the Fossas after the board wipe. Same thing for our next card, which is 4 copies of Madam M. Fox. One of the best 3-drops you can be playing in Amethyst. Needless to say, a rush character. It can challenge for 4, play up a Sisu, it can shut off a Flynn, it can sing friends on the other side, just a lot of things that you want to be doing in the 3-drop slot. 3 copies of Merlin Crab. There's a lot of pesky characters that, even though you have decent stats on your characters across the curve, you need a little bit more power to punch through. This, along with Fox, to take out Chenpos is huge. I know not too many people are playing Chenpo as of right now, but it is relevant enough. This also pushes other cards, so like to 4 with the Cusco, to 6 with the Snake, to 7 with the Fox. Now you're challenging for 5 evasive with the Genie, or same thing with the Elsa. Just a lot of added strength to the characters to help really keep the board at bay since we don't have a ton of removal. 2 copies of the White Rose. This is quite possibly going to be Moana, the Explorer, the uninkable 3-drop, simply for the fact that it does have 1 additional toughness, or willpower I should say, and that allows you to challenge into snakes, challenge into Calhouns, challenge into a lot of things while also staying on board. You may not gain the lore right away, but it doesn't seem necessary to have this gain lore in most cases. 4 copies of Rapunzel. One of the best, if not the best, Amber card draw engine. Needless to say, in this deck, you can find a way to manufacture some damage on your characters, even into a lot of the Ruby matchups. 4 copies of Genie Wish Fulfilled, a wonderful evasive character that ends the game. Replaces itself, has enough willpower to be Rapunzeled. Kind of goes without saying, this is the top card, I feel, from set 6. 3 copies of Merlin Goat. This is a 4-3, much different than the 3-3 we saw in the White Rose. This thing just eats a lot on the higher end of the curve, which is good. I mean, the fact that you can go, hey, I'm going to eat a bell, or hey, I'm going to, trade with a Maui if it has A damage on it. There's just a lot of good additional factors when you look at Goat. Next is the namesake of the deck, Purpfasa. This deck doesn't utilize him quite as well as the Ruby deck does, simply for the fact that you're trying to use him just to maintain a board, right? So this is essentially your be prepared protection. That's kind of what it's in the deck for. Similar to like the Steel Fossilists that we've seen in the past. You don't really need to try to cheat out these big, dumb characters all the time. And that's why if you look back in the list, you don't see any copies of Pluto, Lantern, Doc, Gaston. We're not really concerned about accelerating into this. This is just kind of a top end that helps give us some protection to the wrath effects in the format. Next are 2 copies of Bell, Accomplished Mystic. This card has increased in popularity drastically with the coming of Genie, Wish Fulfilled. Obviously, Genie into Elsa to kill a Genie, or say Genie, your Genie, and then play a Bell to kill a Genie. It's just a very solid 5-drop to help you remove some pesky threats. I've even had some situations where this has been like, oh, I can set myself up to move a damage to clean this up, and then that gives me a play down the road with, say, an Elsa. Now I can guarantee that I slam this Elsa the next turn to be able to take care of this issue, whereas I couldn't do it on 5 initially. Which leads us into Elsa the Fifth Spirit, one of the best 5-drops currently in the game. The fact that you get to exert a character, it has rush and evasive, so when it challenges, a lot of times it's protected. And outside of some of the steel damage songs or actions that we have. As you'll see later, it ends up being a fairly good shift target. 2 copies of Judy Hopps. I was kind of him-hawing on this card. Has support, which actually turns out to be very relevant. It's kind of like a big goat, or a big crab, which surprisingly has come up a lot in testing. Protects your late game Lilos, which is huge. It can also protect anything else late game. Say you had a quest with a Genie, boom, now your Genie is unexerted and they have to have an Elsa to answer it, right? 1 copy of Hades, Lord of the Dead. The more and more I've seen this, I've seen it show up a little bit in Purple Steel. I've seen it show up a little bit in Amethyst decks. And I think this deck in particular really utilizes it to the greatest capabilities. Slamming this after you've got several evasives down, your opponent can't answer them, then you're just questing out, and then you have the ability to like bounce this with a snake or a fox after it quests to protect it, even if you aren't playing a deck that's able to beat you without challenging. It feels very strong. Obviously, being a 3/4, it is kind of weak to some removal in the format. However, what can you do? This is probably one of the best 1-ofs you can run in your deck to make your opponent really think about what's going on. If this hits play, now I can't challenge. Now I have to answer the Hades before I do anything else, because 2, 4, 6 lore in one go, if they're not very far ahead of you, that's hard to make up. I don't think it's very likely that you do. 2 copies of Yzma, Scary Beyond All Reason. This card has seen some play in the past, once again. It basically says, I'm going to get rid of the character that I can't handle, and you're going to draw 2 cards. So, in a lot of cases, this ends up being like Tamatoa or Shark answer in situations where you don't have the ability to go Elsa Crab or things of that nature, It also, if need be, you can draw yourself additional cards if you have enough ink to do that and then have a play that's relevant. I would say most of the time that's usually only if you need to have like a rush character. So if I need to hit a fox in order to be able to challenge something, It's not going to be very often that you do it with your own character and have the ability to play an Elsa afterward. One copy of Wreck-It Ralph, Admiral Underpants. This character is, body-wise, it's huge. A 6'7". It's kind of hard to say that gets taken out by much, right? Survives, and then along came Zeus, even. Your opponent has to put a lot of effort into removing it from the board. It also has the ability, I've got the coolest friend. When you play this character, return a character card from your discard to your hand. If that card is a princess character, gain 2 lore. I know that may seem very niche, but Belle is a princess. Rapunzel is a princess. So you have 6 targets in your deck that you frequently look to use that you can recur from your graveyard back to your hand and gain 2 lore when you play this character. Or if it hits off of a Mufasa, it comes in, it returns a character that's a princess. You gain an additional 2 lore. I'm not saying this card is absurd, but I think it definitely warrants a one-of slot very similar to Hades. And then finally we have 2 Elsa, Spirit of Winter. Once again, I was discussing how Elsa Fifth Spirit is a good shift target. I'm not 100% sold on the inclusion of this Elsa in the deck. I like it. I think it's got a lot of positive things trending for it. It can exert up to 2 characters and freeze them for a turn. It has 4 strength, so that way it dodges a lot of the Ruby removal to begin with as a shift target, or as a shift character. And it's got 6 willpower. It enables a lot of things that you want to be able to do in the deck, as well as being able to slam it on top of a 5th Spirit after you've kind of cleaned up a board and start getting out ahead of your opponent. It's a good way to win the game fairly quickly. And finally, we have 4 copies of Friends on the other side. Needless to say, if we're playing Amethyst, I'm only losing 4 hits for my Mufasa, so I'm not super concerned about there being 4 friends on the other side. We're playing enough 3-drops that we can sing this fairly regularly. We're playing some of the best 3-drops to sing it with. And, being able to keep a critical mass of cards in any Amethyst mirror is very relevant. Especially against like Ruby Amethyst, for instance. You can kind of get ahead of your opponent on cards because a lot of your threats replace themselves, right? So Diablo, Chernobog's, Cusco, Mufasa, Genie, just you have a lot of additional value. Even Ralph is a threat if it resolves, if you manage to get to that point in the game and it replaces itself from the graveyard, or the discard, whether it's getting a princess back and getting you an additional 2 lore, or you're just like, oh, I'm going to get this go back because it's going to win me the game, or I'm going to get this bounce back because I can quest, bounce it, replay it, get another 2 lore, or get 2 lore to win the game because that's my 4, or whatever it turns out being. There's a lot of ability to maintain hand size with this deck, and this card just adds to that. It's also one of my favorite cards. Sorry for the tangent here, but I don't think you're going to find a better card draw card in the game in the future than Friends on the Other Side. I think this is kind of overly strong. I shouldn't say it's overly strong, my apologies. I think it is the best card draw engine in the game, simply for the fact that I can play for free and still maintain all of my resources. That's kind of where Hiram, you look at Hiram and go, oh, well, he does the same thing. It's if he quests, right? So he has the ability to be the best recurring card advantage resource, whereas Friends is just the best one in general, because being able to do this for free on the turn I'm going to play it, so I don't lose my tempo on curve. After I play a 3-drop, then I can sing it, and then also play a 4-drop is absurd. I don't think you're ever going to say anything better than that. But anyway, that is Purpfasa. If you guys have any questions, feel more welcome to leave them in a comment down below. Thank you very much for watching. Also, I don't have very many subscribers. I'm pretty new, pretty inexperienced. If you have any suggestions, feel more to let me know as well. I definitely welcome any input you guys can give me. Once again, thank you for watching. If you can, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll catch y'all next time.